Well, hello, we are outside in one of my garden projects. So for a long time, I've been wanting to add a whole row of Limelight hydrangeas. They are an old, standard, beautiful, traditional hydrangea. They're paniculata in the sense that they have more a cone-shaped flower. The one thing about them, they open up white, they turn a slight limey green after a while, limelight. They get really big, so you have to have the right spot to put them. They can get up to 10 foot tall in my area, more so probably around the 8 foot tall, wide, so they're big. You can control them with heavy pruning, but you need a spot to put them. So I decided along my low woodward arborvitae kind of hedge I have going here, I'm gonna put them behind it. Now, if you've been following my stories, you know that I've been taking out all the sod around this hedge of arborvitae by hand. And guys, that's been a lot of work. I've been adding mulch to the other side. Eventually I'll do it to this side. But this was a lot of work to do by hand. And now I have at least another, I'm gonna say, few feet, probably 3 feet at least, I'm gonna take out. I'm not doing that by hand. So you can rent sod cutters, you can borrow sod cutters. Obviously, not everyone's gonna have a sod cutter, but if you're doing a big project, like when I put in my garden, when I put in things like that, I do get a sod cutter because it makes a huge difference. It actually cuts the sod for you. So I'm gonna start, before we plant these, I'm gonna start by taking the sod off. And it should go better, it should go quicker, and you should know how to use them so you don't get hurt. So you can see, it's a lot of fun. Actually, it's not, but it's easier than taking it out by hand. It jiggles you. You definitely want to be taught how to use it if you've never used one. It does have slight guides on the side, so you can kind of place these points where you're going and know to make sure to follow your line. But what you can see is, what it does is it just takes up that, look at that. Look how much easier. Now, granted, these are not lightweight. They're heavy. And the thing is though, when it's slightly damp, I'm gonna say it's a little bit more than slightly damp right now, but when it's kind of wet like this, it does actually come up easier and it stays together better. When it's really dry, it can get crumbly and it doesn't really hold well. So what I'm gonna do now is take a spade, every so often cut it in sections, just so it's more manageable to hold. This sod, people would buy. You can save the sod, put it in your yard where you may need sod. If you need grass somewhere, use this sod. It is just cut, nice sod. Usually I like to go 1 inch to 1.5 inches, probably about 1.5 inches deep. That's gonna give you a nice run and then give you a nice new bed to work with. But you can see why I do it. It's a lot easier than doing it all by hand. So I'm gonna cut this in sections. I'm gonna remove it. Then we can plant some Limelight hydrangeas. Can you just think of this someday when you can do this? I know, it'll be good. It'll be good. So I've gotten all the sod out and I've been starting with the mulching and the planting, but I'm finishing up on the edging first. So anytime I have a bed that doesn't have like a limestone edging or any other type of edging, I like to use my half moon edger. I have videos on this because I love to use my edger. And this is what I make a clean edge with. And then I also leave a nice 4-inch kind of trench in that edge. What that trench does is actually help the grass not grow up into it. It kind of hardens off any of those roots, gets any of those dried bits kind of and leaves them there. And it's just the best way to do it for me when I don't have edging everywhere, which I mean, it'd be nice, but I don't. So this is gonna get that last bit out. And then what I'm gonna do is just break this stuff up, just kind of break it up. And once I get this broken up, we'll move on, we'll plant some hydrangea. So after 17 Limelight hydrangeas, I have just the 18th one to plant, which is a really good feeling. Now, anytime I plant something, especially a containerized plant like this, which anything you buy at a nursery garden center usually is, I like to make sure it's well watered because it receives water then better in the ground too. If you start with a really dry plant, it can be really hard for it to soak in water sometimes and takes a lot more than you think. So I have my hole here mostly dug. And the ground had been kind of hardening off because I took all that sod off, then the sun beat on it, and so it was kind of getting a little bit tough on top. So I have my hole in here dug. It's beautiful, rich soil. Hydrangea-like, well-drained, but moist environments. They like the water, especially with the big flowers they produce. So they want it to drain well, but also be in a place where it gets good, ample water with good loamy soil. So if you have really heavy clay soil, it would be good to amend it, probably up to about 50% of the native soil, to a good compost and just something that's gonna have a little bit more nutrients in it and be a little bit of a soil lightener. So I like to always break up my roots, and I do this with anything, if it's a perennial, a shrub, just because it kind of stimulates new root growth to grow laterally, which is what you want them to do, into your native soil. If the roots are really tight and circling around the plant, this is gonna stimulate them to grow into new areas, which is what you want. You want them to break into your new soil, into their new area, because hydrangeas like this put in large lateral roots. So I'm gonna set it in the hole. I'm making sure that it is no deeper than it was in the container, and I always plant mine slightly above, a couple inches above, because they always settle with all that soil that I disturbed when I was digging it up. And you don't want them to be planted too deep. Just like a tree, their root flare kind of is on top, and you don't want that to sit below the ground. So when you plant them slightly above, they're able to settle in at the right height. So I'm gonna put all the soil back around it. We're gonna just push it back around. We're gonna get this watered. We're gonna put mulch out. It's gonna be a good bed. I have it planted. I put the dirt back around it, and now I'm just putting mulch around. So for a couple reasons. One, with all the bare ground, weeds would just spring up so quickly. So the mulch is actually gonna help suppress weeds. And I'm putting it a good 3 inches thick because I really wanna make sure that I'm going to cover that bare ground and any weeds that come up. Now my trench I'm trying to keep exposed because I always find that that helps this grass not come over into the bed. The mulch, of course, is also gonna help what? I think you know, it's gonna help keep the moisture where you want it. So these need to be well watered after they're planted too. Start with well watered, end with it well watered. One, they need the good drink. Two, that water actually goes down in there and helps get all those air bubbles out. When you're putting the ground back around it, you know, some air bubbles, some bigger pieces of ground, they're gonna make pockets. This is helping pull all that out because those areas could make dry areas around the roots. They could dry out in spots, no good. So water it well. For this size, I'm probably gonna water it at least 2 gallons each. And now the most important part is just to make sure it stays watered as we go into summer, not as much rain. That's really important. So this is how easy it is to plant 1 or 18. Obviously it took a little bit more time to plant all 18. But the thing is, now that it's done, now that it's well mulched, all I can do is keep it watered, and soon enough, in a few years, I'm gonna let these get 8 foot, possibly 10 foot tall, wide, big, with huge, beautiful blooms that I can just come out and cut and enjoy for my backyard. I'm so excited. So I hope this inspires you, excites you. You can create new types of hedges, have something different, have a row of beautiful hydrangeas. You have to find what works in your area, in your planting zone, but you can make it and you can have fun with it. So as always, share this video around because yeah, it helps me, but it helps so many others see how easy and fun it is to make an impact in your yard, in your garden, in your area, because when we enjoy it, we're more happy. Check my website, wiseguy.com, for tips, for tricks, for recipes, whatever you need. Because if I'm not in the kitchen, I'm outside in the garden. And that's where I love for you to join me. So I'm gonna keep working. Go buy something and plant it. You'll feel better, I know you will.